Senator Cwodzinski.
Thank you, members. I may not be giving the shortest speech, but I guarantee you I'll be the shortest speaker. I was asked recently to speak at a wedding and by the bride and groom, and I walked up during the ceremony, and I walked up to the dais, and I simply said plethora. And I went and I sat back down, and the bride looks at me and whispers in my ear, "Thanks, that means a lot." And my first day here, I parked in front of I got a parking ticket on my very first day in the Senate, and I parked in front of a sign, and the sign said "fine for parking." And the police officer that gave me the ticket and I disagreed on the intent of the sign that said "fine for parking." Anyways, and in that desk right there, I think on my first day, for those of you that were here, I think you'd all agree I made a smashing debut that day. But you didn't come here today to hear a bunch of college-level jokes. I refuse to call them dad jokes because they're for college grads, because they, anyways. When I announced I was retiring, people said, "You're going to be a lame duck." And I didn't like the sound of that, so I tried to think of something better, and I came up with the phrase lamenting duck, because that's how I feel. I'm a lamenting duck. This is a bittersweet decision. I'm sure all the members that have spoken so far are feeling the exact same thing. And rather than a lamenting duck, I have this image in my head of the Clash singing, "Should I stay or should I go?" But I guess I've made that decision already. For over 30 years, I told my students, leave this world a better place than you found it. Leave this world a better place than you found it. Solve as much of the puzzle as possible before you perish. To know one life has breathed easier. Belong to something larger than yourself. And then, spoiler alert, if you've never seen Saving Private Ryan, I used to tell my students, have you earned this? Have you earned this? And that great scene at the end of Saving Private Ryan when Tom Hanks' character grabs Matt Damon by the collar and pulls him into his face and goes, "Earn this, earn this." And flash forward at the end of the film, Ryan is standing with his wife at his graveside, and he says to his wife, "Tell me I've been a good man. Tell me I've been a good man." I think of that every single day, here and in the classroom. So now and then a brave young student, when I began this tirade about leaving this world a better place than you found it and solve as much of the puzzle as possible before you perish, some brave young student would raise their hand really slowly, and I go, "Yeah, what is it?" And they'd go, "Well, Mr. Cwodzinski or Swad, can you tell us exactly how you're doing that?" And I'd turn around and start writing on the blackboard something about how a bill becomes a law 101 or something. And then I decided to finally practice what I preach. And after 33 years of promoting civic values in the classroom, I decided to hopefully run and serve alongside you. And now and then I'll run into former students and parents, and when I would tell them what I'm doing now, and they'd say, "Well, that must have, teaching government surely prepared you for this." And I would just shake my head and go, "No," because nothing I taught was based in reality. I taught out of a textbook. I didn't know. I used to tell my students that lawmaking, Otto von Bismarck once said lawmaking is like sausage making, and you should never watch either being made. And the kids would all giggle and laugh, and then I came here, and I realized lawmaking is like building a skyscraper. Every step along the way is this thing to behold, or writing a sonnet, or writing a symphony, and at every step of the way there's falls, but ultimately you end up with this beautiful, beautiful thing. I want to apologize to all those students that I laughed and said lawmaking is like sausage making. I couldn't have been more wrong. And I used to tell my students all about national government. And we talked about the U.S. Constitution and federal policy and foreign policy and presidential personalities. And I never once mentioned the words Met Council or county commissioner or city council or state legislature, because state and local government just wasn't as sexy. Can I say that? I don't know. It just wasn't as cool as foreign policy. And then I came here, and I realized I wish I could go back and reteach my classes, because I realized the work that we do here is so valuable and so much more important than what we try to do at the federal level, because we make a real difference in everything we do. And nowhere in the textbook, and I'm not going to single out staff, because I know you know in my heart and I tell you what you mean to me, but nowhere in the textbook does it talk about all the staff that many of you have already mentioned that run around this place and do all the hard work where we reap all the benefits. So thank you all for that. Thank you for everyone for putting your trust in me. It's been an honor and a privilege and a joy and a pleasure of a lifetime. I hope some of you that are listening in will step up and serve and sacrifice. It's good work we do, and you know it. It's very good work we do. I'd like to hope that Minnesota is the best state in the nation to live and work and raise a family and get an education and play. I want to thank my family, my wife. I wasn't going to say this, but I have to. I was a knucklehead in high school, believe it or not. When I was 17 years old, I had this horrible, horrible car accident. And the original first responders that showed up on the scene told the ambulance that was 30 miles away, take your time. We're not going to get to this boy. He's going to die in his car. And eventually the ambulance showed up, and they took me to the local hospital in Superior, Wisconsin. And the nurse ran out and looked at me, what was left of me, and said, get that boy to Duluth, Minnesota, because if you bring him in here, we don't have the facilities to keep him alive. And the ambulance driver got back into the car, and they drove me to Duluth. And I came 2-3 weeks later, and it was 51 weeks before I was going to be able to walk again. 51 weeks. They did facial reconstruction. I sued the doctor after that. And then about 4 years later, I fell in love with this beautiful, beautiful woman. And she said, I want you to meet my parents. And, you know, that's always scary, right? When they want you to meet their parents. And I go meet this woman and a man, and this woman takes me out in her patio. And she goes to me, do you have any idea what happened to you at your car accident? And I looked at her because I was surprised that she even knew about it. And she goes, I was that nurse that sent the ambulance to Duluth, Minnesota. And she shook her finger at me and said, you better treat my daughter well. I always pause at the painting of Governor Perpich down on the lower level, because I love his portrait with his wife Lola. Because none of us do this alone. And all the other governors' portraits, they're standing by themselves. But Governor Perpich decided to put his wife in the portrait because he knew that none of us do this by ourselves. And sometimes, as I said on the floor a couple days ago, somebody much smarter than me said it truly does take a village. And I stand on the shoulders of giants, mostly so I can be seen, but we've been given a rare opportunity, ladies and gentlemen. Only 1,407 people have been able to say in 170-some years, I was a Minnesota State Senator. Process that. Only 1,407 people have said, I had this civic duty, and I stepped up and served. I was willing to sacrifice. 1,407 people, man. That's pretty amazing. Members, your civic engagement, your political efficacy, your public service, your sacrifice you've made for your families, something to behold. The framers and founders of our nation and our state gave the world something precious to cherish. It has been a model for the world based on thousands of years of political philosophy and political experience. Over the last 250 years, that document, our Constitution, our Declaration, our Minnesota State Constitution, has been tested repeatedly. And it's been bruised and battered and beaten, but it's never been broken. There's that great line from the 60s, there's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Living is easy, Beatles song. Living is easy with eyes closed. Misunderstanding is all you'll see. Think about the darkest days, the warts in our storied past. Some say we've never been this divided. We've never been this divided. Yet I believe with every bone and fiber and sinew in my body that our best days are ahead of us. I gave out copies of the Declaration of Independence on all your desks a couple days ago, and you may have noticed twice in the document, which we're having our semi-quincentennial, if you haven't known that, coming up here in a matter of in 6 weeks. And you'll notice that twice Jefferson writes in the document, united, verb, States of America, noun. It wasn't United States of America, it was hopefully States of America that could become united. Something we don't really point out much in class. But we were united because the framers knew that's what would make America great. Benjamin Rush said at the time, at the end of the war for independence is over, but this is far from being the case with the American Revolution. I have stood in this chamber now for 10 years, and I often look, and I know I'm taking up the former part of the quote, but Daniel Webster says, perform something worthy to be remembered. Perform something worthy to be remembered. Earn this. Perform something worthy to be remembered. When FDR died, a group of people gathered outside the White House, and everybody was sobbing hysterically because a great, great human had perished. And the journalist trying to find a story to report went up to some person that was unconsolable and laughing, tearfully sobbing hysterically, and this journalist goes up to him and he says, "Did you know the president?" And the guy responds, "No, but he knew me." He knew me, senators. That's what our job is for people to know what we do here. We're coming up two pretty significant events. The semi-quincentennial of 1776 and our nation at our best. And the 25th anniversary of our nation at our worst. This September, we'll be honoring the 25th anniversary of 9/11, one of the darkest days in our nation's history. When Francis Scott Key woke up that morning as a prisoner of war in the Baltimore harbor, and he looked up and he saw what he saw at Fort McHenry, and he penned his masterpiece, "Oh, say can you see those 15 stars on that star-spangled banner? And is it still waving over the home of the free and the land of the brave," or whatever the phrase is. And those guys, 82% casualty rate, 82% casualty rate. To this day, the highest casualty rate of any regiment in U.S. history, the Minnesota Regiment at Gettysburg. They hung that flag. The flag, a little different flag than Francis Scott Key saw. Those guys at Iwo Jima that planted that flag on Mount Suribachi, one of them was from Richfield. They saw that flag. When Neil Armstrong planted that flag on the moon and said, "One small step." When those 3 first responders flew that flag at ground zero, no one asked any of those people if they were Democrats or Republicans. When I go door knocking and right away somebody says, "What party?" and I'll go Democrat, and the person will say, "I'm sorry, but I'm a Republican." And I'm like, don't apologize. I want to live in a strong 2-party system. I want 2 viewpoints. I want 2 alternatives. I want to hear what people have to say. I truly believe we are the beacon of the world because of a strong, stable, productive 2-party system. I believe that that's what made America great. Voltaire once said, "I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend with my life your right to say it." I will defend with my life your right to say it. When we walk under that door and we look on that mural behind us, every day I walk up to those stairs and ask the sergeants, I'm sure they've noticed, I always pause to look at that beautiful mural. It's called the Eternal Flame or the Sacred Torch, and it shows an elderly woman huddled around a campfire. containing thousands of years of wisdom and knowledge and all the things that make our species unique. And she has just handed a torch to a middle-aged figure. And the middle-aged figure is lighting with her torch the lamp, the sacred lamp of a young person. That's what we do every day in this chamber. Every day I walk through those doors, I think, how are we lighting the torches of the next generation? Plato once said, the Greek philosopher once said, those having torches will pass them on to others. That's what you do every single day here. You light the torches of others. Never stop believing in the work you do, because it's good work. Members, we're part of the world's longest ongoing experiment. You guys, we're part of the world's longest ongoing experiment. Embrace that. I began today by talking about leave this world a better place than you found it. Solve as much of the puzzle as possible before you perish. I was pretty excited to use that puzzle joke line because I finished the jigsaw puzzle in an hour this morning. The side of the box said 4 to 6 years. To know one life has breathed easier, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, to know one life has breathed easier because you have lived. That's good work. You earned this. You earned this. That's what we all try to do as senators, try to earn this. My enthusiasm and passion for our democracy will never waver. It may seem old-fashioned and sentimental, but I love my country. I love my country. I love the state of Minnesota, and I always will. My grandma and grandpa, they raised me till I was 12 years old, and they gave me a milk glass when I was a little kid. And every night, why would these two immigrants to this great world, fleeing the horrors of Europe and the isms of Europe, why would they give their grandchild a milk glass with an image of John F. Kennedy on the front and on the back, the words, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country? Why would immigrants give their grandchild that milk glass every single night? Indeed. The Beatles, the last song, the last lyric, the last notes they ever recorded. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. 10 years ago, the people of Minnesota and my district put their trust and faith in a soul studies teacher to come here to do some good stuff. It has been the ride of a lifetime, members, and thank you so much for indulging me.